right, so super excited you all are here. I think it's a great transition from the Deloitte session on skills, so we'll continue to talk about that. We hope that there are little nuggets y'all can take, whether you are in the beginning of your journey, on the skills journey, maybe you're in the middle of it, or maybe you already started and just want to learn more. So before we dive in, we'll start with some brief introductions. I'll go first, and then I will let Casey introduce herself. My name is Rosanna Arias. A lot of folks call me Rosie, so if you hear that, you are welcome to do that too. I am a customer success manager here with Eightfold. I have been with Eightfold for coming on 3 years next month, and have had the honor of working with the Twilio team since about September of last year. So excited for y'all to hear from Casey directly, and then we may have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, potentially. So with that, I will let Casey introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Smith. I am at Twilio. I'm a senior manager of career development, and that's kind of expanded a little bit. We've captured career development. Now that's also talent mobility, promotions, talent review, succession. So a lot of different ways that we're seeing skills kind of be applied. I've been with Twilio a year, but I've been in the talent management space for over 10 years in different industries, manufacturing, aerospace, finance. So it's fun to see how this exists in different places. And so Twilio is tech-based, so seeing kind of what those skills look like and how they differ in different places.
Awesome. So before we officially get started, one, Casey, would love for you to tell everyone a little bit about what is Twilio in case anyone here does not know. And then also starting to think about the concept of skills-based talent organizations and how that is applied at Twilio.
Yeah, so I always do not our salesperson's sale of Twilio, so they should probably teach me better. But it is a customer engagement platform, really business to business. And the way that I always kind of describe is when you get that text from Uber saying that your car is there, we power kind of that communication. So voice, SMS, text, and also AI is really playing a big role in our area of how can you customize customer solutions, how can you get customers the information that they need, such as when you checked in here, did you enjoy room service at 10 p.m.? And so would a prompt let you know or let the hotel know to offer you that so that you would, order your food. So that's a little bit of how it works at the organization, or what our awesome people do there. And so with that, it aligns a lot with the work that we're doing when we think about how can skills be used to be transferable across the organization, knowing that AI is a part of what people are doing and implementing as our engineers. How can we help them understand how they can continue to grow in the organization and see where their skill set will expand, and also being future focused and ready for how the industry may change.
And to that point, for those of you that use SMS, like our SMS services at Eightfold, it is powered by Twilio. So in the back end, that's how it all works.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the very beginning. I know you have been with Twilio not very long, but you have been a critical part, I think, of the success so far. And so wanted to talk a little bit about the business need for driving skills-based transformation. So anything you can share, especially for the folks here who might be thinking about it, what that business need was and what you're seeing so far.
Yeah, so we really wanted to think about, and I think it's what a lot of the conversation has been earlier today, thinking about what's that future of the workforce? How are we going to think about talent? Is there a space where you don't think about exactly the role? You don't even use a job description. It's just kind of a focus of what skills you need, and everybody's more adaptable and able to move. I don't know how much we will actually get to that space, but that has been part of the conversation and why skills became important to us. So we've started on a roadmap of thinking about, first, let's understand what skills means in our organization. We're saying the word skills, and sometimes, when you say words over and over, I don't even know if it has a meaning anymore. So when I say skill, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. But what is it? What's present in our organization? And that's what Eightfold is definitely helping us figure out. And then how do we think about how it can influence different talent practices? So succession planning. Do we look for successors with certain sets of skills? Talent reviews. Do we think about your potential through a skill mindset? When we think about hiring, are we aligning skills and internal mobility and giving people a little bit more stretch assignment? So we're thinking about it as like a core building block for the ways ways in which we communicate with one another. And that was really what the business need was to be a little bit more adaptable. Our businesses change. I think organizations, particularly ours, are getting a little bit flatter, right? So you have to think about more of that lateral movement versus vertical. So how do you make people feel like they're still growing without, feeling stagnant, but knowing that there's less and less opportunities the more you go up in an organization?
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point, especially in smaller organizations, of it's not necessarily rethinking how you get promoted, right? It's not necessarily about the next role up. It could be a role in another team that you're learning new skills potentially that might be of interest to you. So I think that's really, really important there. So curious about how this might be a little bit different than what you all have done in the past. I know Twilio, for context, is on a full talent transformation journey. So we're focused today really on skills, but of course it's the full talent ecosystem. So moving into succession, talent acquisition, all of that. But would love to know how this is a little bit different than how y'all have done things in the past.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I've been there a year, but from just my understanding and what I've seen in the business, everything can also be so disconnected, right? You have one business, your engineering area, they're doing something different from your legal team, and everyone's just doing their own language, own conversation, and that's a little bit of what we had. So each business area would create their own frameworks, and they would take months and months to update them, and then by the time you update them, there's a reorg, and half the roles that you updated them for don't even exist. And so that was really, I think, the state that we're like half in, half out of, because as we've rolled out the TM portion of Eightfold, rolled out to the business at large in March of this year. So we're still getting kind of, what about our career development frameworks? Do they still matter? And so trying to navigate the business to understand our transition to using our platform. So we've marketed internally as Career Hub. So getting people to kind of switch their mindset a bit. So there's going to be a gradual change management, but before it was really just kind of those ad hoc, business-led driven, their own ways of thinking about skills and talent.
So it was really everyone kind of do what they wanted versus having some structure to it.
Yeah, we all work at the same place was probably the biggest commonality.
I think folks can probably resonate with that here as well. So something you said earlier, going back to that. So you said skills, right? Sometimes we don't even, what does that even mean? So curious if you could share with the group here how you really made skills a core part of the process versus an afterthought. I think a lot of organizations say, well, we want to be skills-based, right? Well, that's our focus. We think that's important, and I think it's a buzzword in some ways, but I think you all have done a really good job of defining those and putting it front and center. And so curious about that, if you could share how you keep it at the core versus just an afterthought that, oh, maybe we'll do later.
Yeah, so I really think with the Eightfold platform, the talent design piece really has unlocked that for us. So the job intelligence engine, we decided when we were going through the process, we wanted to get all of our roles in the organization into the platform. And so at that point, we needed to understand what are the skills with these roles. So how are we defining that? When individuals go into the system, they need to see required by role. So what are those? So skills became kind of the centerpiece of how we had conversations with the business. So we worked with our HRBPs, let them know that we were interested in having like validation sessions for what do these roles mean? What skills do they need? And then they would select managers or leaders within the organization to come with us, sit down for an hour session and talk about what are the skills by level. So we broke down, and for context, we have about 1,800 roles in the organization, which is too many also, so I'll say that. Half of those, I don't even know if they actually exist, but that was another cleanup for another day. But we were able to have conversations with leaders about what did they see as a skill set needed based on level, based on management, and with that, it really brought them along. We were able to use the platform to show them, what are some market skills available, talked about proficiency and potentially what does that look like at each level. So I would say the tool really facilitated us being able to have that conversation and to get people to understand, this is what we mean when we want to say we want to use skills and identify what the work means through that.
Yeah, I think it's so important. You all did such a good job of being, I think, intentional in the process, right? And we'll talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics, change management, next. As a previous human capital consultant, I feel like I can't help it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think I would love for you to share a little bit about how you're managing that change, because I do think sometimes organizations will do like a pilot, right, with a small set of users, but then it doesn't launch broadly. And so it kind of stagnates in that pilot. And so getting past that, I think you all have done a really good job of now launching in March to the full organization, and making changes in that pilot originally. So would love for you to share how you're managing change. So I think change is difficult, right? There's so many things, and this is just one platform. You might be using several other things, other changes in the organization. So curious how you're managing change and how it's being received so far.
Yeah, we are still trying to figure that out. We're doing a little bit of a drip campaign, but as you mentioned, we did a beta test of the TM functionality in October of last year, and we had select users across the organization. We thought about people that were impactful to what we're trying to push out, our future business, and then we also use those business areas that are always kind of open to testing, so getting your comfort group and then a little bit of your stretch group. And we asked them to really give us their experience. We created user guides. We did office hours, supported with BCC and Eightfold to really be able to answer questions that people had. We did surveys to get feedback along the way. So really got a lot of user insight. I will say that I was coming at it from a place of, we're gonna launch this anyway. So, I mean, just help us help you like it, because it's gonna happen. We bought it. But, I would say that, in jest, but I really meant it. So they kind of understood that it was gonna happen, but they were really helpful with getting us some feedback and recognizing what metrics we wanted to measure. So we looked at profile creation, ease of profile, kind of customer sentiment, how often did they see themselves going back into the platform, the ease of creating career development plans. And I think we got a lot of good feedback on what was easy to do and what was a little bit more harder to do. That's where we got some insight on skills. So as the platform parses your resume, you might get a whole bunch of skills. How do you kind of look through and decide which ones you want to showcase? So it was very helpful. And now we're continuing to just focus on profile creation, getting people into the platform. I think our leaders are really focused on what data is available, and we've had to help them in a change management space of, we just launched in March. Nothing in there is really useful for you right now. I think maybe if 5 of your people have been in the platform, I can't tell you much, but it's been a change of letting people to understand when the value will show up. And then most importantly for me, I just want the employee to feel like it's useful. If it doesn't feel useful for them, then that's the part that we need to work on. So while we're driving profile creation, while we're driving people to get in, I just truly want people to feel like it's a value add to them when they are in it. And so that's kind of where we're focusing our energy.
Yeah, I think that part is also really important in terms of like what's in it for them. And one of the metrics that we do like to measure is the returning users into the platform. Because you don't want someone to go one time, great, you created your profile, you updated your skills, but are you coming back? Is there a reason for you to come back? If there is no reason for you to come back, then we are not going to take an extra step. And so I think that is really important. I think we've talked about some of the really positives so far, but would love for you to share some of the challenges. I think any tech adoption, right, there's some hiccups along the way. And so curious, any challenges that you saw or anything you would like to share about some of those potential hiccups?
Yeah, one that is always prominent, I think that was mentioned earlier, was job architecture. It's one of those things that it's like for us, it was definitely behind the scenes. It was never employee facing. And now when you have a platform that's going to showcase all of the roles in the organization, that junk closet becomes like wide open. And so we were like, all right, we probably need to clean this up a little bit, but not detract from the work that we were trying to do. So it was an interesting way that we had to deal with it. Job architecture changes were always out of scope for us, so we wanted to keep moving forward. So we made it out of scope, but we would filter back what we were seeing with our compensation team because they own the job architecture. So we just showcased it like, this is what we're seeing. We have about 600 roles with no one in them. Don't know if you want to help us get rid of those or not, but or deactivate, or what's the future use case for them? Do we want to spend time having leaders go through sessions and validating skills for roles that we may not use? So it was just those interesting conversations, but we did keep the changes out of scope because it can derail you, right? You find another thing that you have to start to fix. So that was one of the bigger challenges, but it was very interesting to kind of navigate through it and think about what's the employee experience, because they don't know anything about what that means or why does a role exist, but there's no people in them. And so thinking forward about what those questions could be. And I think from a tech perspective, we've loved kind of collaborating. I think there are things that we thought were going to happen, and then maybe the system didn't necessarily do it that way. And so we were like, can it do it this way that we're thinking? So going back and forth, I think one of those was really with the skills. We were interested in seeing the market-based skills for the role versus kind of what skills the employees had and that populating it. So had that conversation of what skills can really be shown that we can start to anchor off of and align the role to. So I think that was one of our kind of bigger begging of, can we do this, please? So it was fun to kind of work and collaborate and figure that part out.
Yeah, and I think to that point, right, sometimes the system is designed in one way, but to the point of like having that conversation with the teams of, well, we understand the current behavior, but is there room to change it to make it more helpful for the employees? And so keeping the employee front and center, I think, is important there. And I also think the other point that when we talked about this, I was really interested in is the job architecture not typically being visible to the employee. And I found that really interesting because it resonated a lot with me in like previous organizations. Sometimes you just don't even know what the next potential move could be. And so that usually drives people out. If you don't know, you know that you don't want to maybe be in your current role, but you don't know where that next role maybe is internally, you might start to look elsewhere, right? And so that's one of the things we want to make sure that isn't happening. And so that also really resonated. But now taking a little bit more positive again in terms of successes, I know right now it's very early and we haven't reported on a lot of things, but curious how you are measuring success or plan to measure success with your leadership team internally. Anything you can share there?
Yeah, we have gratefully gotten a lot of support from our leadership team. So a company OKR is that we have 50% of our employees have active profiles in the system. So with that, the whole entire organization is really behind it. And that's been really nice to be able to anchor into something that is going to drive some impact. I mean, with that, I think we also have to manage behavior. I don't want leaders chasing people down, kind of like with your engagement surveys. You want the customer or the employee feedback, but you don't want your leaders to be like forcing them to do it. So there's like a little bit of balance there. But with success, so we definitely have the profile creation as one of them, people being in the platform. We are also looking at the utility of it. So are people creating career goals? Do we see people creating career paths? Like you said, the returning users. That is one that we're interested in. We also have a space where I think we've launched like within the platform, you can do a survey. So gonna look back at that feedback and see what the customer, like a quick, 5-star rating, if you would come back or, and tell your colleague to, come back into the system. So looking at that customer sentiment, we have career development on our employee engagement survey. So looking to see if the scores there change as well, to see if we've provided a tool that allows for that a little bit more. So those are some kind of measures of success, and we're still looking to figure out what else is there. I will say that we definitely, as I mentioned earlier, have people interested. People are asking for data. They want to know what are the top skills. So once you launch, I think, especially that TM portion, it's important to be prepared. I don't know if we were really, but for the questions, you're saying that it's going to offer you this insight and they're ready for the insight the next day. So, but it's nice to know that they're interested. So I'm excited once we start to understand what it really can tell us to be able to drive the business in that way.
Yeah, I feel like there's always a sense of urgency, right? Because for the employee, they're logging in and they want it right then. So before we open it up for a question or two, any words of advice that you wanted to share? It could be for folks that were early in the process, maybe something you wanted to know early on, or something that you've learned. I think, like we said, it's something that people are really interested in, but maybe don't even know where to start. So any words of advice you would like to leave the room with?
Yeah, I think two things. One thing is be clear on your in scope, out of scope, because that out of scope can creep in and be a distraction. So just be clear on what you know you don't necessarily, you can go forward with. And maybe it's going to be a little bit clunky, but you don't have to waste the kind of capital or the energy to change it. I think that was really helpful for us in defining it. And the other piece for me that is just most important is putting the employee first. I think when we often are in this space, right, we're implementing a platform, we're trying to sell it. So you're trying to sell it to leaders, you're selling it to managers, you're selling it to employees as well, but you want to show like the business case and the ROI. But for me, it's really important that the employee feels heard and respected, and that all decisions are kind of transparent and actionable. And without that, it's mostly useless. So I would say just anchor in that employee experience, because that's really what's the core of what you're driving. And I found that has been helpful when I have to give some insight or, push back a little bit on an expectation, because it's not really core to what the employee's experience is going to be. So those were the two things that kind of stuck out.
Yeah, I think the in scope, out of scope can definitely creep up really fast across. So awesome. Before we wrap up, want to make sure if there is a question or two that is pressing for anybody, could be anything, you can certainly feel free to ask.
Thank you.
I loved what you said about the business kind of rushing the gates. And I'm wondering, are you telling them when value to them is going to show up?
Yeah, so we thankfully, I think I need to thank my manager for this. We kind of made value contingent on activity. So we have said that we won't provide data until 50% of that business unit has their profiles activated. So it works both ways, right? We know that the information that's in there, someone has gone through and they've added their resume, but that's kind of also helped us with our launch of getting the activity that we want. So we've told them that value at least will be able to be somewhat discussed once we have 50% of their business unit with their profiles activated, and then we'll decide kind of what information we'll provide, such as top skills, what are those top role career interests, what are the learnings that are showing up, where one thing we haven't turned on is like manager proficiency. So we're still on our journey for proficiency, but once we do that, we'll be able to tell them a little bit more about skills gaps and where to invest in upskilling. So those are the things that we've mentioned are the value that will come if they can help us with their profiles.
Love that. So just to say that back to you, the value that you're proposing to them are the insights that you're going to bring them.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you again for this conversation. My question is around proficiency ratings, which you kind of just mentioned. That's a difficult task. You have a lot of red tape and higher ups to approve on something like that. How are y'all thinking about in the early stages around proficiency ratings and how you're applying them?
Yeah, so we're begging Eightfold. No, I think I heard something about maybe there's something coming out about like proficiency and maybe how to apply it at scale. So that's one thing, leaning on what the platform will do. The next thing that we will have to think about is it just going to be a gradual? So if it's we have like P3, P4, P5. So if it's a P3, it's the proficiency at a 3, at a 4, it's a 4, 5 and above, it's a 5. So we're trying to think about what's a way to do that at a scalable rate, instead of essentially we might have to go back through all of those sessions again and ask those leaders. And I don't think they'd want to do that. So that's going to be, it is a big task. I agree. I think maybe I'm a little afraid of it. So that's why we're pushing it a little bit. Yeah.
And I think to that point, in terms of like if there are like any gaps or needs, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like our product team is always looking to understand. So we can chat more about that.
My fears.
Your fears.
I'm curious to know, how do you define ROI? Do you have like some North Star success metrics that you kind of keep track on to show like there's value in continuing on this journey?
Yeah, I think we're actually still kind of defining that. What, in my mind, the way that we've started to discuss it is how embedded our skills in the things that we do. And probably, as mentioned in the earlier keynote, time. So how much faster can we find successors? How often are people moving? So I think internal mobility is one of the metrics that we really are going to focus on. We have like a career framework of different moves that employees can make. And what are the metrics? How are we seeing promotions, lateral moves when we launch projects? So being able to see the movement within the organization is definitely one of the metrics I think that we're going to lean on for return on investment. Yeah.
I think, oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, I thought I saw the tape
So
in my
what
back.
do you highlight to the employees as a value add or incentive for them to get into the platform and really dig in?
Yeah, so last year we rolled out a career development philosophy, and what we've outlined are roles within the organization. And the main one is that the employee owns their career. The manager is there to support it, and Twilio as an organization is there to enable it. And so we've presented this tool as the enabling piece. And what we've sold for the tool are the, what's in it for me, for the employee, is that you get to own your career. There's visibility into roles that they hadn't had before. And so that's a big piece. When we did focus groups, we found that people couldn't see, and we're a remote first company. So I think that also adds another layer to what's visible. So we just told them that you can now see different careers, you can see different roles, different opportunities, you can build your own pathway, you can identify your own skill set. You own what you know, right? No one should be telling you what skills you have. You're able to showcase the work that you've done prior. I think sometimes when we join organizations, it's like amnesia that I had a whole life before this. And so wanted to showcase that, you've done work in the past. How can we help you showcase what you've done and be able to apply that to something else you might want to do? So I would say visibility, personalization, and kind of that respect for their past career history.
Awesome. So I think these were great questions. Casey, thank you so much. For those of you that are still interested in this topic, we will be having a value spotlight series for our customers that know what that is in July. So we'll talk a lot more with our product team about talent design, talent management, and then someone from the Twilio team will also be joining us there. So July 16th, save the date, more to come there. But Casey, thank you so much for all your insight, and thank you all for being here today.
Yeah.